record on this computer. All right, here we go. First Ramesses session for the new year. And let me move this down here. Okay, here we go. So last time we had the infinitive, and today's topic is, well, this topic goes by a lot of different names. Neveu calls it the pseudo-participle. I personally like stative. In Coptic, it becomes the qualitative. That's where it's going. All perfective is what it's also called. That's basically where it comes from historically, when you think about it. We'll talk about that more in a moment. So it goes by a lot of names. For today, I'll just use stative, simply because I think it expresses best what this form does. It's also what the cognate form in Akkadian is called. And yeah, all about that verb form, basically. Quick recap what we had so far. So far, in terms of verbal forms, we've seen the sachem F in two types, the past tense, or for example, the perspective. So something like himsaf erchinai, may he sit with me, together with me. Normally there would be like a D in front to give, so make that he does something, something. So that's a sachem F form. The subject comes after the verb. In this case, it's a suffix pronoun. Then the bread and butter forms of late Egyptian, those things that are formed with the infinitive. In this case, for example, the first present. So tui himse, or later the her falls out, so simply himse, I sit down. Actually, it doesn't mean I sit, it means I sit down. It's like the beginning of an action. The her falls out, and so in Coptic, you're basically left with himse, or depending on the dialect in Sahidic, it would be tichamos. Yeah, so that's very common in late Egyptian constructions of that kind. Could have other beginnings, like for example, it could have UF or F himse, he sat down, or as he sits down, sequential or circumstantial, two different usages of the EU particle. And there's a whole bunch of others. We had the conjunctive, where you glue multiple sentences together, the third future. But what they all do is they have some kind of conjugation base, so to say, and they have an infinitive afterwards. So that's everything we covered so far. Today we come to the next structure, which is the so-called pseudo-participle or stative. And that's also an inflected form, but in this case, the subject comes before it, and then there's a conjugation ending at the end. So in this case, for example, tri hamasti, I am seated or I am sitting. It expresses not an action that is like starting, but it expresses the outcome of an action. So in this case, I sat down and now I'm sitting. So tri hamasti. Older version would have a K here, hamask. That's what you probably used to for Middle Egyptian. And we'll look at those endings in a moment. This here is like a 20th dynasty innovation where the K gives way to a T. More about that in a moment. But so yeah, the basic structure is subject first, followed by an inflected verb, which essentially has the meaning of expressing the state of something. In English, we'd often use a participle. It can look like a participle in the third person. That's why the name pseudo-participle, but it's actually behaving very differently from the participles in Egyptian. So much for an introduction. What you can see is they all have different vocalizations. I tried to show you that, like, for example, the first present, the infinitive is really himse. The stative is something more like hamas. So yeah, the vowel patterns change, even though that's not always readily visible in the written form. Any questions before I go to the next page? If not, then let me go.
I do have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
You have T here, hamasti. I'm just a little confused because in Neveu, T is listed only for the second person, not for the first. So I'm a bit.
Yeah, give me 2 slides.
Okay.
The classical form is with a K or KWI. That's how you know it from
Right, Qui, yes.
That's what you also.
Egyptian.
And then later, it's basically the first and the second person merge, and they all become T. That happens towards the end of the 20th dynasty.
Okay, that's interesting because here in Neveu it says that they merged to two, not to T.
Or that, same thing. Basically T.
Ah, same thing. Okay.
That's the
Right,
same thing.
right.
Good point. We'll get there in a moment. Let's
All
start.
right, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's a great question. So before we go into what it becomes in late Egyptian, I wanted to show you where it's coming from because that's kind of cool. So for those of you who know any of these languages, Akkadian or Hebrew or modern standard Arabic, that should actually be very familiar because the endings are essentially the same. The endings that you use in Middle Egyptian would be ku or qui for the first person in the stative, T and T for the second. Masculine and feminine are the same. I didn't put the indication here, but this is supposed to be I. This is supposed to be you, singular, masculine and feminine. Then the third person, sometimes ending in W. Most of the time we don't see it. The feminine of the stative, she, would have a T at the end. And in the plural, you have these endings, basically, if they're fully spelled out. Very often they're not. But for example, if you look in Allen, you will see the form that's written with the TU bird, which looks almost like an Aleph bird. And essentially, that's like the second person plural, masculine and feminine. So that's how it looks in Middle Egyptian. Now, the cool thing is, if you look at Akkadian, you can tell that it's pretty much the same thing. Akkadian has a stative. It's essentially a verbal adjective that you put these endings on. And what you can see here is that it's matching almost 100% with what you're seeing in Middle Egyptian. And if we look over to Hebrew, it's almost the same thing. What is that? Katafti. I hope I pronounced it right. Katafta. Kataf, Kataft, I guess.
Kataft.
Yeah, I put the endings here. If you can't read Hebrew, that should help. Again, you can see it's
But the way
almost the
you
same thing.
transcribe the third plural wrong, that's u, not nu. Katahu.
Did I transcribe what
Katahu.
the trau or the
The
T sound?
third plural, you have nu for the ending. It's just u.
It's just oh, you're right.
And then it matches perfectly with everybody else, even.
Thank you. So then let's fix this. So it's is it just u in Hebrew? So which of the
Yes.
two is wrong? It's just u. Okay. All
It's
right.
just u. The Hebrew is correct. The transcription is wrong.
Yeah, I know what happened.
It's
I got confused
let me
about
pronounce
that.
it. Katvu. Katvu, I think is pronunciation. Vowelizations give me
Yeah,
trouble as well.
yeah, you're right. That looks like Katfu here. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you can see again is, I mean, pretty much the same as in Akkadian as in Egyptian, and the same thing on the Arabic side. The only thing that you notice already, the K ending in Egyptian and in Akkadian has become a T ending as well in Hebrew and in Arabic. This carries over into modern Egyptian Arabic, which I don't speak. I hope this is correct. I've shown that chart a few times so far. Nobody has cussed me out, but luckily you found the mistake here in the Hebrew. Thank you. So long story short, why is this cool? This is cool because for me, that's a great illustration for Afro-Asiatic, or at least in this case, between Egyptian and the Semitic languages. I can't do it for the other branches of Afro-Asiatic, but people like to get all hung up on things like cognates. And I'm thinking, if you look at a verbal pattern that's basically the same between multiple languages, that's the biggest smoking gun you can have for that they all belong together at some point in time. Not that that's a debate, but I don't know. I still find it kind of cool. So that's where it's coming from. Now to ET's question, where is it going next? I'm going to make you guys smaller here just so I have more space. These forms, they suffer radical simplification in the late New Kingdom. In the 19th dynasty, it's still pretty much the Middle Egyptian pattern. I mean, we can say that the first one is probably just a K, because sometimes the second person gets misspelled. The second person of the Sechemef gets misspelled as Qui, which basically indicates that, well, you know what, that one wasn't pronounced Qui, that was just pronounced like Sechmak, may you hear. So it's pretty sure that this was simply a K ending without any vowels. Then you have the tu or T, the third person for a weak verb, one that ends in a weak consonant may have a double reed leaf, otherwise most likely nothing. And for the feminine version, you still have the T as the dominant form. And then the plural, essentially, you have this N, which is interesting. It looks like a normal suffix pronoun. Second person, again, the T. You can already see how they're merging. Well, that was actually true before as well, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. The original version has an extra N, which is now gone. My bad. And then, again, the third person plural, singular, and plural, at least for the masculine singular and the common plural, they look the same already. That's the state in the 19th dynasty. Then essentially the first person starts to merge in the plural. So they all become T. And then towards the end of the 20th, beginning of 21st, the dates vary a little bit between what Neveu gives and what Czerny gives, but it's right around the same time. Basically, they all become T. So now you have like a dual system. It's either T or TW or nothing. Nothing for the third person and T for everything else. So that's when you get that confusing situation where you suddenly see the T ending for first person where you would expect a K. That's just something to get used to, depending on what age the text is. In Coptic, then, you're left with a situation in the so-called qualitative where there's either no ending whatsoever or there's a T ending. And sometimes that varies between the dialect. Let's say, for example, Bohairic may have the T ending in the qualitative and Sahiric doesn't. Maybe the opposite as well. Can't think of an example, but it can be that different dialects inherited different forms here. But that qualitative that indicates that something is in a certain state, like for example, Eschai is to write, and Sech is written, like the word that was written or something, the word that you find written in the Bible, that would be the qualitative. So this form lives on in a little bit of a shadow of itself as the qualitative verb form. So I hope that answers a bit the question as to where that T was coming from in the first person. Something very similar happened in English, where basically first all the plural endings got merged in the verb, and then they fall off completely. So first, second, and third in English, the plural endings merge in early Middle English, and then they basically go away completely. And now we're left with only one form for the third person singular, the S. Everything else has fallen away. So it's a process like that, essentially. Any questions or comments on this one?
I just had a quick question about the previous slide with comparison between Egyptian and the Semitic languages. This is just comparing the stative endings in Egyptian to the Semitic languages, right? Are there
Right.
other forms that are that distinguish between the genders of the second person in verbs in Egyptian, or is it looks like here the second person singular and plural are the same form in Middle Egyptian but in all those Semitic languages they're separate for the
Right.
most part. So
So for Egyptian, to my knowledge, and those who know Middle Egyptian better, as you guys know, I focus on Late Egyptian. To my knowledge, they're never separate in the stative. Masculine and singular, masculine and feminine are the same. Of course, if you look at, for example, the normal Sejam F, the suffix pronoun, those are separate, feminine and masculine. I'm sorry, yeah, K versus ch. But in the stative, not, as far as I know. I don't think there's any distinction.
cool, thank you. Because I know there's a separate set of pronouns, just like in Semitic languages for that, or similar. So cool, thank you.
Yeah, what happened there is you have a ka and a ki, basically. The ka for the male and ki for the female second. And then the ki becomes a chi. And that's in like pre the written record in Egyptian. So by the time that Egyptian writing sets in, you get like an uk, like a K sound for the second person, such much may you hear. And if you were to say that to a woman, it would be such much, becomes such much. And by late Egyptian, the T has fallen off completely. So you get a very strong distinction between male and female. They all come from a K sound originally, but due to the different vowel following afterwards, they're being treated differently, essentially. But in the stative, no, they're the same. Or it,
Awesome, thank you.
okay. Or maybe there was a difference in the vowel and we just don't know about it. I mean, that's the problem, right? If it's something like ta and t, you wouldn't see that unless it changes the nature of the consonant. So that's a really good point.
It could be because you have that in Hebrew with I mean, if you look at the Hebrew, if you leave out the dots, they look exactly the same. It's only in the vowels the difference in the second singular,
Right.
though, in this case.
Arabic the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
All right. And I wanted to say there is also a tendency to drop the differentiation in the second plurals, because in Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew, you still find in the plural, in the future, sorry, plural, what the hell? In the future, of course, in biblical Hebrew, it's the imperfect aspect. You find a differentiation between second plural male and female. And in modern Hebrew, that has gotten dropped completely. So this seems to be, something they're getting rid of. And if I can find the chapter in Gardner, I will tell you what it's like in Middle Egyptian, but I can't find it.
yeah, pretty sure it's the same. By the way, for
Probably
Akkadian
right.
too, I think it depends on which Akkadian dialect, if the plural is distinguished in U and R. I think some do, some don't, but Akkadian is not something I know beyond the very basics, so not sure. Let me go on a little bit, unless there are any questions on that, and do a few examples. Then we can take a confirmation when you find it.
Yeah, will do. There we are.
Oh,
No, there is no. You're correct. You're completely correct. It's Sejim T in the singular and Sejim Tuni in the plural. So
cool.
there is the only differentiation is in the third persons between male and female, even Middle Egyptian. Now it would be interesting to dig out a book on Old Egyptian, but I don't have one.
True, good point. There may be a reading group in Old Egyptian at some point in time. Not from my end, but there were some rumblings in the Middle Egyptian reading group, which would be so cool.
Somebody shared a primer on Old Egyptian some time ago.
Right. Would be cool to do something there. But hey, that's 1500 years away from us right now. So let's go back to our late Egyptians. Usage. I thought Neveu skipped the simple usage and just said, oh, just look that up in chapter number 16, like he so often does. If you didn't do that, why don't we just start from the basics on this one? So the most common use is, especially with transitive verbs, a state that you're in. So, for example, if anybody wanted to take those, we can just do those live and in color. Let me do the first one. So tui himsek, no, hemask, I guess. Tai akai. So basically, akai is a fisher boat. So I was sitting or am sitting in my fisher boat. That's from actually, I think it's a police inquiry where somebody was describing what happened. So this is the stative. Why? Because he's sitting in there. He didn't sit down in it, but he's already sitting in there. And then something happened. Let me click on the transcription. So like I said, this is wrong, I think. No, it's right. Hamsak. Hamsak in Tai Akaid. Akaid is not spelled completely here. There should be a double reed leaf, and there should, in principle, be a T at the end, but this is late Egyptian. So all T's at the end of words are history anyways, unless you spell them TW or TI, TJ. So, yeah. So how is that formed? New subject pronoun for an adverbial sentence. Then the stative, inflected for the first person singular, and then an adverbial expression at the end, in my fishing boat, with tie, because it's a feminine noun, so has to be tie, and the first person singular here, so it's my boat. And that's really all it is. It indicates a state that I'm in, or in this case, that the speaker's in. Any questions about this one?
So it's the old subject state that we're used to in Middle Egyptian, right? Just written out.
Hi, Chris.
we.
Just written out, you mean this one here?
No, I'm saying it's the subject stative form that we're used to in Middle Egyptian, right?
Uh,
The subject that we or the
mhm.
and mesqui. So it's the same, still a subject, still the same subject, right?
Right, it's the same. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying now. Yes, there's agreement between the pronoun and the subject ending here. So yeah, it's the same subject. You're correct.
Subject.
You're specifying it twice, sort of like you would do in French, I suppose, like you definitely would do in German, where you first have to use the pronoun and then you still have to put the correct ending on the verb, even though you have the pronoun there. So good point. It's expressed twice. That's right. All right. Anybody want to take the second one? And I'll help with vocabulary questions of any kind. These
Yeah,
are
I'll
not
go.
anywhere. Yeah. All right.
So we have deck whoer
Mhm.
do im how
Perfect.
and I don't know what is
Where,
whoer or where.
so where is an adjective verb, means weak or feeble.
So you are weak or feeble in your arms.
That's in your limbs. In your limbs, you're
In
right.
your limbs.
Right. Arms would be awi, but this is hao or
Yeah.
something. So yeah.
Oh,
Now, what do you make out of the two at the end of the where?
well, let's see. In the stative, this is the way your. I want to say I'm tempted to say one really fast, right? Like one's weakness.
Not really. It's a stative. First answer was correct.
Oh, still the stative.
It's just a stative ending, the two
Yeah.
of the second person. Has nothing to do with the indefinite two, even though they're written the same way. They're like three different things that are written the same way. The two for the indefinite pronoun, the two for the stative, second person, and later like all persons. And finally, when you have like an object pronoun afterwards, like if you had tooth or something, to on a weak verb, they're all spelled the same way. It's just basically the way to say there's a T that's really being pronounced. It doesn't fall off. All right, solid job. To quedet, Rauk, you are weak in your limbs, or in context, you are too weak in your limbs. This job is too big for you. This is, of course, from Horace and Seth. Cool. Thanks a lot, Chris. Next one. What do you make out of this one? Number 3.
I think I can do this one.
Okay.
It to earn Eckerton.
Mhm.
We are hungering, or we are hungry.
That is perfect, yes. And I think that came from the strike papyrus, actually. It means we are hungry. So what the stative is doing for you here is basically indicating the state that you're in. And to Chris's point, well, Chris and Chris. So it's specified twice. You have the we here as the late Egyptian subject pronoun, and you have the we again as the stative ending at the end of Ochekar. And it may come as a surprise that adjective pronouns take the stative too. But for example, you can say ti anechti, I'm alive. So it wouldn't be ti anech or something. Ti anechti or older would be anachek, I guess, with the qui ending. So you use the stative very liberally with adjectives to indicate that's the state that I'm in. And this competes with the old adjective, the ne su construction, where you have the adjective at the beginning and then the dependent pronoun after, which more has a meaning of, I shouldn't say that, no. It's basically two different ways how to express what state you're in. You could do it with ne su, or you could do it with the subject pronoun and the stative. Both are valid. Very cool. Well done. Anybody want to take number 4? We're doing well on time.
Can try.
Can do that.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
But it's fine.
okay, thanks. Tui,
Mhm.
Chai, Chait, wie auch immer, aber en Taik mer.
Mhm.
So I don't know the verb chai.
To rob, to steal.
Ah, so
The end is a trick. This is 20th dynasty, so there's something going on with that N.
oh, I see. Oh, so it's potentially an M.
Bingo.
Mhm. So I am stealing from your canal.
So Emerald is port as well. So in this case, it's port or harbor.
So it can be I'm stealing in your harbor.
Right. Now, is it I'm stealing though? Because if it were,
No, of course not. It is. What did we say? It's finished, so I have stolen.
would be, it's a transitive verb though. Think about rob and not steal.
Yeah, robbed.
Oh, I see. I have been robbed, right? Because transitive's passive. Damn it. Yes.
Right. I mean, technically, it could be I have been stolen. That would be another possibility. Doesn't make a lot of
But
sense in context. But no, that was a great exercise though. So yeah, ichat is basically I have been robbed in your harbor, like you had. What would be I am stealing in your harbor?
Prospective, which gosh. Sorry, I'm just suddenly started not feeling great. Prospective is I'm blanking. We've had it, but it's one of the constructions, but of the analytic constructions, but right now I'm not quite sure which. Oh, there we are. Right there.
I mean, if it's just like something that's going on, I am stealing right now.
That could be first present, but
It's exactly what it is. It would just be her chai. I am stealing. Simple as that. Or after the her falls out, it would be ti chai, because the her by that time 20th dynasty is gone. Perspective would be more like may I steal.
for a bit. Sorry.
Gotcha. All right. So that was a good point though to point out. The only reason that you can tell it's definitely a stative is the two, because what else should it be? So yeah, in this case, I have been robbed within your harbor. And that's of course our friend Venamun complaining to uh, the local noble, wanting compensation for what has happened. Of course, the problem is that the thief that robbed him was from his own crew. So it's a kind of dubious argument that he's making here. Cool. Who wants the next one? And this is referring, I should say, to a tomb, just to give a bit of context. Grammatically, it's a little bit more tricky because the first verb form is something we haven't discussed yet.
Yeah, I'll go.
All right.
So we have ir, empty set,
Mhm.
and something like that.
Mhm. This could be a tool. I should say that. It could be, it could not be. Um, I'm not sure. Let's see. I forgot how it was transcribed. I think it is a tool.
I found it. I found it.
You
Again, something like that.
go again?
I have something like I have found it open again, or I have found it open already. Something.
Yes, that was perfect. That's right. So
I
let's
have
look at the
found.
so this part is a bit tricky. This is a second tense. E technically that always emphasizes some kind of adverbial expression. The way that I found it, basically. Gemtis. And this here should be iri her gemtis. So this is an infinitive. It's not a stative. It looks like a stative because it has that T. And if you're used to Middle Egyptian, your mind's going to go to, oh yeah, that's like a stative formation. It's not. It's just,
Exactly.
I stumbled over that too. I mean, you're just so used to it. But no, in this case, I think it's just an infinitive because it's followed by a direct object. So the way that I found it was namely when to open, and like you said already. On can also be can also be again. But I think in this case, in context, I found it already open. So in other words, we arrived on scene and it was already, seal's already broken, the tomb's already open. That's what the person is describing here.
Hmm.
Cool. Very well done. That was quick. So I think that gives you all an idea on how the stative is used. If you're knowing Middle Egyptian already, this shouldn't be a surprise because it's pretty much the same thing. It indicates a state that you're in after some action has happened.
Just a question, Aurelio,
Yes,
if
sir.
I may. Stative is used fairly often in Middle Egyptian. I think I read somewhere that it's used less often in late Egyptian. Is that true?
Ooh, that's a good question. I honestly don't know also because I can't put a number on it, and also my Middle Egyptian is lacking, full disclosure. I'm still learning. So what I would say though, is especially with some verbs, it's very often, very frequent. Like for example, the verb to sit, chemsi, you're going to find a lot of times as the stative. And some other verbs are also very common in the stative. So it depends a bit. But I would say it's fairly common still. Um, interesting question.
Also, it's common in in Coptic, isn't
Oh
it?
yeah.
Which makes it unlikely to have dropped out in late Egyptian.
That's right. It's so funny in the case, for example, of Ramesses. So it's Ramesses to sit in Bohairic, but all other dialects have Chamos or a variation of that. In Sahidic, it's Chamos. That is actually the qualitative. Because when you think about it, you use the English verb to sit way more often than to seat somebody or to sit down. I mean, that's like maybe 10% of the usage. So in Coptic, the qualitative actually became the main infinitive, which is kind of interesting. So
Uh,
yeah, I think you'll see those quite a bit.
I have a quick question about the pronominal suffix on your limbs and also on in my fishing boat.
Yeah.
Is that so in Coptic, would I feel like would be there'd be like ta from like taak or
Tech. Hmm.
tech
Hmm.
and from the earlier like tayak or tech.
Hmm.
So why is the K on the end here? Is that a common late Egyptian thing or is this an older form?
It's an older form. So you can do that on a few words still in Coptic. You can do it for some body parts. Like for example, your mouth. I could say rok, I think. You can still put the K at the end. It's a very limited number of nouns, mostly body parts, where you can do that in Coptic. In late Egyptian, the number is somewhat bigger. Body parts, your name. It's not Pekran, your name, but it's Rinek, your name. So it still goes at the end. It goes with some titles, so like higher speech level kind of words where you use the older construction, a little bit like we say force majeure in English and put the adjective at the end because we're trying to be a bit more archaic, a bit more upper class.
Like a
Um,
higher register kind of
higher
thing.
register, that's right.
Okay, cool.
You also see it in poetry, like in the love songs, Chester Beatty, I can never say that right. Which one is it? Guys, help me out. Chester. Huh.
Oh, the papyri.
Yeah, I forgot whether it's
Yeah.
Beatty or Betty. In any case,
It's
there's
Beatty.
Beatty, right? Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at that. Chester Beatty. So the love songs on there, if I remember correctly, they alternate. Sometimes you have like Peck, Pes, etc., the New Egyptian variant, and sometimes for the same word they would glue the suffix pronoun at the end of the word. I think it's to be more poetic, higher register. You're using the older form. In this
Oh, that's
case,
cool.
it's because it's a body part. It's your limbs, and those can still take the the suffix pronoun. I think that's what it is here. Like your arms, your eyes, your ears, and so on.
Cool. That's really interesting. Thanks for explaining that.
It's cool. I mean, yeah. That my father's house, the house of my father. It also depends a bit on speech level and the overall cadence of the sentence, what you're gonna pick. There's a bit of variation there. Great question. Anything else on these?
Oh, sorry, one last thing. The on at the end that means already. That has no relation to the Coptic negative negating thing on, right?
That's right. That would
Okay.
be E01. It's spelled with that bobalis animal, like a little horn-bearing animal. Looks like with a like a small deer or something, but we all learned that's not what it is. That stands for JW. So Iuna is the negation, but it does live on in Coptic as on again. So not
So the
an, but
EU
on.
falls off or collapses into on, into the ah vowel,
Correct,
and then
correct.
the sound stays because it's followed by a vowel.
That's right.
Okay.
But this one here lives on as on. The on in Coptic, that means again.
With an omicron, or depends on dialect.
In Sahidic, it's Omicron. I could have sworn in Bohairic too, but I'd have to double check.
Cool. All right, thank you.
All right. And I see Rebecca nodding, so glad I didn't mess those up. Okay, awesome. Now let's talk about the other usage, main usage, which is primarily with intransitive verbs of motion. And there it still has that old meaning of the simple past. In Middle Egyptian, you see that quite a bit, like in tomb biographies. Then I went, then I did go to XYZ place. That is still doable in late Egyptian with verbs of motion. And it alternates. You can have like the same sentence starting with a past tense and then go on with the stative. So that tells you it's really an equivalent. Excuse me. And I had a few examples there that we can go through. And I don't know if anybody wants to pick one, try their luck at this. This must be something Ramesside, temple inscription, I guess, because of the orthography, just the way it's spelled. This is not a papyrus. Anybody want to give this a shot?
Well, I can try, but I won't know half the letters, so I'll try.
Mhm.
So set,
Right?
and then the number three, the three under it, is that just irrelevant?
And no, it just means that the set is the plural set. So it's not a
Oh,
she, but it's a they.
ah, so lots of women.
Not necessarily, that's a great question. It refers to the enemy's troops, them not being Amazons. I'm assuming it's men. But it's still spelled with a T, presumably because they fell to that's just, let me see, set. It's just a plural pronoun. It's just a spelling of the plural pronoun, which would become se in Coptic later.
Okay. Set. I don't know what that bird is.
So that bird is ak.
Ak.
Ak, and the verb is to enter. I'm trying to think if that still lives in Coptic. Not sure. Not certain. Let's just take it for what it is.
Ak. They entered.
Mhm.
Ak. Now, is that an ah? I can't remember what that strange thing is.
It's an alternative spelling for M, for the,
Ah,
it's not the
into,
owl. That's right,
okay,
into.
into something, neb, no, ooh, that's a place.
Right.
Uh,
Do you know what this one is?
no.
So that is hun, or shen, actually. H with a bar underneath, shen. And the whole word shenu is basically hun in Coptic. So say ak hun as in inside. Ehun. So you can think of this as an early equivalent of ehun. Say ak ehun, ehun. Mhm.
Well, so is it a tomb or a temple
You could think
or a
because
house?
but this is actually just you would think it could be Perl for a house, but the word inside is already spelled with a house, so it's just the determinative for that word Chenu. So this whole thing is
Entered
Ehun,
in.
Ehun. Now the
Okay,
question
they
is, Mhm.
sorry,
No, you're
they
good, you're
entered
good. Mhm.
um ta. Oh no, that's just the ta, but there's no ah there.
That's right. And that's how you know it's a temple inscription. They often just spell the bird here. It's not a ta, though. It's the masculine.
Ha.
That's right. It's pa.
Huh?
The
Now
next
these look that guy looks like an arrow person.
is. Do you know what
Archers.
right. Do you know what a crowd is in Coptic?
Oh, something like it's not Shere, but it's I do, but I've forgotten.
Me'eshe in Saitic, Me'eshe. Mesha is the army in late Egyptian. So Pa Mesha et Me'eshe, it doesn't mean the crowd, it means the army.
Oh wow, like a host.
Correct. So,
Um,
mhm,
the army of
mhm.
um. Now I don't know what that thing is.
So the baseball bat is Chem, which can be either servant or can also be majesty. In this case, it's definitely the majesty because it has like a little sitting king behind it. So in Chem, not any majesty, but Chem.
His Majesty.
Correct. So majesty to Ben's point from a moment ago takes the suffix pronouns, just like in Middle Egyptian. So it's His Majesty and not Pefrem. Perfect. So let's put it all together. Se ak emchenu or ehun pamaeshe enchemef.
You do. I've forgotten.
So ak was enter.
Go on. My brain's gone. You do it. Someone else do it.
No worries. I have the answer here. I mean, you had the pieces. Seat Emchenu, they entered into Pameshe, Pamesha, the army, and Chemef of His Majesty. Or the way that it was translated here, they penetrated into the army of His Majesty. Basically, this is describing an assault that Ramses was on the receiving end of, I think Ramses II, probably Kadesh. And of course, it's a turnaround story. In the end, it all ends well for Egypt, or at least that's what they say. But at this point in time, it's looking kind of dire. All right, well done. So the cool thing here again is how much overlap you still have with Coptic. This word is gone. This is still there. This is still there. Ak, I really don't know. This glyph is also used to spell the word aku, bread, but it gets a different determinative. It doesn't get walking legs, but it gets like little pieces of bread, basically. And that one is still alive as oik in Coptic. But I don't know about the word to enter. I really have to look after this session. Cool. Well done. Thanks for that one. We have two more. Whom have I not heard from yet?
I can take one.
All right.
Tui Henu Ek Tui Henuk and so and so.
Yeah.
I'm the property of so and so, or I belong to whoever.
Yeah, but it's a verb actually, a verb that has a running leg at the end.
Oh,
It's
oh,
to run.
wrong Henu, wrong
Yeah,
Henu. I escaped. I am escaped from.
it could be. It could just. It's just running to somebody. I know what
It's
I
just
think.
running. Oh, okay.
Running or even going, like
To hurry up or something.
hurry up, to go in a hurry, to go quickly. Or honestly,
Oh, okay.
Poist claims it's just to go. Um, I'm
Oh,
mhm.
oh, so I'm going.
Close, but just one thing. What do you make out of the K?
I thought it was the older form of the stative.
And you would be 100% correct. So if it's a stative and a verb of motion, is it I am going or is it
I have gone.
right? I went, or yeah, it could be I have gone, or it could just be for verbs of motion, a past tense. I went. I ran to N, or I went to N, or something of that nature. And that's what it is. I ran to N. So well identified, this is really the ku ending, but it's spelled like a second person because, hey, that's how it's pronounced. I mean, they're telling us how it was pronounced. Hoist claims that this is the regular form for to go in the past. I've seen it mainly as the way that Chris put it, to run quickly, to haste. I have no opinion on that yet. I don't know. I don't know enough. But in any case, yeah, it's a motion towards something. Yes, Rebecca.
So is it literally I am gone to?
It could be. It could be. Just that, and that's where the whole thing that the stative expresses a state. Um, Actually, I had an example for this that is perfect. So let me use this one right now. This is from a description. Something happened. Basically, the writer saying Pai Rame Maut, the man died. Su Maut, he is dead. So it's the same stative verb form, and in one case it means he has died, and in the other one you would translate it in English as he is dead. But this really, from an Egyptian point of view, it's the same thing. It's more a question of how do you want to translate that. When it comes to verbs of motion, it may make in a narration, for example, it may make more sense to translate it as a simple past. So basically, rather than I have run, it would be I ran. So the army, it's a different story, but let's just say the army invaded, I saw it, and I ran to so and so to give him a report or something. That would be perfectly okay. And if the person were talking to you right now, I have run to indicate, so now I'm here, maybe, possible. But in a continuous narration, I would just do a simple past. Great question, though. The stative is at that edge of indicating the outcome or the action. It's more the action for verbs of motion. And for the other ones, it's more the outcome. Very well done. In the interest of time, I think I'll just do the last one. Petri or Peter Power Gesi and Gati Iu. So basically what that is, Peter, you guys will remember, is look. It's the new version of muk, to see, or ishepe or ishete in Coptic. So basically look, Power, the great one or the chief. But of course, since it's a chief of a foreign country, we have to say Gesi. So the miserable chief, the miserable great one, the miserable chief of Kati, so of the Hittites, right? The miserable chief of the Hittite, Iu, he has come. So this is a stative. And in this case, to Rebecca, to your point, here it makes more sense to actually say has arrived rather than he arrived or he went, because I'm putting a look in front. I'm clearly focusing you on, okay, so this guy is now here. What do we do with him? Yeah.
It's interesting because I guess I've studied English. To me, it's more natural to put it in an old-fashioned way and say, look, the wretched chief of Hatti is arrived.
Oh, it's arrived. Ooh, yeah. There's a
Or
slide.
even Rebecca is come.
Yes,
come
exactly.
on. Now we're going full
Yeah.
King James. But
Yeah, thank you, Chris. We're showing our age here, aren't we? I'm sort of thinking in Elizabethan English.
Well, I don't quite remember the 16th century directly, but I have read about it.
We could add a lo and behold, but not the
there
Hebrew
you
Yeah.
go.
translation of the Hebrew lo, but just the English word lo. Look at this. Okay.
Thou
Yeah.
couldst indeed do so, yes. So no, I mean, and by the way, that's an interesting choice. I think Christian talked about that too. How do we want to translate things? Do we want to put them into Elizabethan English or older? Do we want to put them in contemporary? I think it depends entirely on the register of the text. If it's like a noble proclamation on a temple, maybe we really want to do that. If it's, I don't know, a more rowdy story, then you might not want. It really depends. I love those.
Yeah, it was interesting when I listened to the Christian videos, because he's American and Aurelia, because you're in New York, you're quite casual sometimes. Whereas I think those of us who are still living in the UK and are fuddy-duddy in my case, when Christian was struggling to think of things, I was immediately thinking in Shakespearean English.
And nothing wrong with that. I like the sound of it. Very cool.
They're here.
So there's one last example left then, and then we actually hit exactly what I was planning to go over. One last thing I want to point out, which is the use of rech, to know. So rech is actually to get to know, to learn. And to know, you have to do in a past tense. And the way you do that is by the stative. I think it's the same in Middle Egyptian, if I remember correctly. So surech is actually not he knew, but it basically means he learned and now he knows. So in other words, he knows. Same thing in Latin, it would be novit. Novi would be I have learned. In other words, now I know. While nosco would be I'm learning, I'm getting to know. So I'm acquiring that information. Interestingly enough, Egyptian does the exact same thing. If you want to say presently, I know, then it would have to be tirechqui or later tirechtu or tirecht. So that's a little interesting side note here. And that's honestly, oops, no, I'm not going to show any examples from the homework. So that's as far as I wanted to get today. So perfectly on time. Great job, everybody. And I would say there's going to be a homework. And otherwise, let's continue with Horace and Seth next week and Ramses the week after.
That's great. As a new boy, how do I get the homework?
Oh, I would need your email. You can just send it to me by private chat. Oh, no, you have my email. I have your
Yeah,
email.
you have my email.
So
You have my
then,
email.
thanks for the reminder. I'll just put you on the distribution list. What I do is I send them out by email, and normally the ask is please send them to me ideally by Friday before the session. So the Friday before the Saturday in 2 weeks. If I get them a couple of hours before the session, also great. I like to look them over so I know what basically where people got stuck, so I can prepare something around that. That's why I needed a few hours earlier. And that's it.
Great. Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank
weekend.
you.
You.
You too.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
Hope you feel better.
Thanks. I do
Oh, yeah.
already.
Bye, everybody.
Hope so too. Right.
It's already better. Thanks. Sorry about that.
No, hope you feel better soon. Where's my Zoom button? Here we go.
Great, thank you.
Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.